Welcome back to the Contrarians. My name is Martin Popoff. I've got Tim Derling here with me, and we are doing a new show here. This is the second one that we've done. This is the Contrarians presents Build a Concept Album. So what we're doing is we're looking at bands we love and their catalogs, and we're thinking, wow, these guys have never made a concept album. We could probably put something together that fits a concept album, maybe fits their personality. I have a feeling that's going to go with the one we're going to be talking about here today, and just give you the lay of the land of these tracks in order and how this story works and how this could be a cool concept album by this artist. So today we're going to be looking at Sammy Hagar, the Red Rocker, and Tim's got a real treat for you. I've seen the notes on it here. This is actually really cool. Tim, take it away. Tell us about this supposed Sammy Hagar concept album.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, I mean, if people haven't really read a lot that Sammy has said in interviews and stuff that isn't about Van Halen or tequila, you might think he's a guy that writes about sex and drinking and relationships and stuff like that. But he's an interesting guy. I mean, he's a UFO guy. He's a big believer in aliens, alien life. The reason that he called his publishing company The Nine Music is because he claims when he was little, he was visited by this alien race called The Nine. And he mentions that in one of the songs I'm going to talk about. So I thought, yeah, we could probably do a concept album of songs that Sammy has done in various incarnations over the years to do with space. And as I got into it, it really sort of wrote itself. One song just led into the other. So I started off with the catalog, like a lot of his Capitol records from his first debut to 1980, Danger Zone, a lot of outer space references on there. But that's not all. I mean, it's kind of covers his career, really. So in the spirit of because we are going to dip slightly into the Van Halen catalog, I decided to be a little bit funny and borrow a title from the last Van Halen album, A Different Kind of Truth. So I'm calling this album Sammy Hagar's Out of Space.
Nice.
So that's what I decided to go with. So yeah, I came up with just a little concept, and like I said, the songs just seem to lead into the other. So yeah, so we'll start it off. The first track on the album comes from, I believe, the third Sammy Hagar solo album, this very uncharacteristic album cover by Hypnosis called Musical Chairs from 1977. And it's actually the last song on the album. I think it's the last song on the album, called Crack in the World. And this is where I've decided to, our protagonist, our hero in the story, I've decided to call him Cabo.
Okay.
I come up with that. So I've described him as sort of an affable, if somewhat eccentric man, but he's sort of like a doomsayer. You guys better be ready. End of the world's coming, like a doom prophet or whatever. Of course, very few people listen to him, but in this song, Crack of the World, it's like, look for the subtle clues. It won't make the front page news. And he's talking about 50 years from now, it'll all be clear and things like that. So I thought that was a good place to start. And as these things go, like every disaster movie you've ever seen, very few people actually pay attention to them. They write them off as crazy. And things go from bad to worse really quickly, which takes us to this album, Street Machine, and one of his heaviest songs, This Planet's on Fire, Burn in Hell. It's basically apocalypse now, there are meteorites crashing to the earth. Computer systems are going down. It's just chaos. So he has developed a few followers, this Cabo individual, and he's leading them to safety. In this story, like I said, complete flight of fancy. Experimental rockets have been developed that are capable of, housing several individuals inside, and they're also sort of self-flying. There's, you don't need to know anything about how to operate a spaceship. Just get in it and go. And so there are sort of these launching pads, and one reason or another, disaster has struck the first four. So they end up in a little place called Space Station Number 5 that takes us back to 1973, the first Montrose album. And, start with the sun, move on out. What a time we had living on the ground. And remember when it was so clear, like looking back on her, they're on their way. They're leaving the earth. seemingly in the nick of time. They think that's it for Earth. The Earth is gone. If it doesn't completely blow up, it won't be habitable anymore. So they're on the ship. They're on their way to somewhere. They're not really sure where at this point. So they're in the middle of being upset. They have this sense of calm. They're on the ship. They're heading out, and Cabo finds himself staring out one of the little port windows, and there's this one little star that catches his eye. So he watches it. That brings us to the next track from his second album. So we go from Musical Chairs, which has almost nothing red on it. The one before it, pretty much everything's red on it. Yeah. It's also known as the Red Album. It's actually just self-titled. The song is called Little Star / Eclipse. Eclipse is sort of like a little instrumental coda. And it's basically he's talking about somewhere there's a hole in the sky where angels fly and slide down rainbows. Somewhere there's a place for us. So climb on infinity. So there he is. He's looking up. He thinks it's going to be all right. That kind of continues along. Then he starts to wonder, has he made a mistake? The naysayer's been right about him. His chicken little tendencies all along. And just for fun, I said they even used to, yell chicken foot at him just as a nickname. And had to try to throw that in there. So the next song we get to, we're back to Musical Chairs for the song Someone Out There. And that's exactly what it sounds like. They're looking for other signs of life. I feel so scared and lonely, but I know they're going to come. I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting for the third kind. So that might be a reference to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So now, people are starting to, hey, when are we going to get somewhere? What's going on? Where have you led us? And so he thought, okay, before they riot, before somebody does something rash, I better get into one of these little shuttles. Like I'm just thinking of Star Trek where they have the Enterprise, but they have little shuttlecraft that'll, go off on its own and explore. He's about to do it, but where he's kind of the leader, this guy in the back, who I've decided to call Hampton, says, no, I'll do it. You're the leader. You stay here in case something goes wrong. Well, something goes wrong, and this brave Hampton becomes a space-age sacrifice. So that's something from the second Montrose album, Paper Money. It all happens fast. A meteorite just comes, just completely takes out the shuttle. Didn't see it coming. So Cabo has a little eulogy for him, and I couldn't resist. I had to throw in some puns here. His eulogy says, "Rest easy, my friend. Alas, you weren't the last man standing, Hampton."
Nice.
So then the stars kind of come out again. It's almost like the stars went completely black when the ship blew up. They see a red planet, and they're not 100% sure, but they're pretty sure. They now know where they're going. They're marching to Mars. So that brings us into the late 90s with this album. They're marching to Mars. They'll find life in the universe, as the song goes. So now it's positive again. It's switched places. Now, the rocket lands itself on a platform that's seemingly waiting. So this Cabo, he says, he gets everybody behind sealed doors. He opens it up. Well, turns out the air is breathable. He didn't, his lungs didn't explode. And it's all red. So I said, nothing but red, red, red. No substitute for red, Cabo chuckled to himself. So he's just about to tell the others that they could safely disembark when everything went dark. Speaking of red, that brings us to this album. And actually, the day we're filming this is actually Alex Van Halen's birthday. So this is for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge from 91. And the song is Pleasuredome, which I thought was outer worldly enough to include here. Lost in a world, can't find my way home, miles and miles from nowhere. And as he's in this state, this place, strange dreams haunt his subconscious. So we go to the quasi, I guess you could call it the title track from this album, Danger Zone, just called The Danger Zone. It's just a short little spot. Says, want to be alone right now. Just leave your message with my clone. I've just passed through the danger zone. So it's a strange dream that he's having. So then he regains consciousness. And I said, if it were possible to see a color darker than black, he was seeing it. Like there was just nothingness there. Now he starts to give himself a hard time. Should have known it was too good to be true. What am I supposed to do now? And so he laments being trapped in this, he calls it a room. So I'm playing In the Room from Three Lock Box.
Yep.
And, he feels like he's caught, always alone. People outside, you feel as though contact now is denied. The claustrophobic atmosphere nearly drove Cabo insane. So now he's thinking about his passengers, his friends that came with him. And then where he goes from absolute dark, he goes from absolute bright lights. He sees these lights that are brighter than anything that he's ever seen before. So now the song goes back to his first solo album, 9 out of 10 scale, the song Silver Lights in My Eyes. Here I sit on foreign land. There's so many things I don't understand, the reasons for the life of man. So that's where he's at now. Then we have this being from hold on a second. I'm using my computer to read this. So it kind of goes back to when he was a young boy, where he would like look out his window late at night, and he just knew that there was life out there. There was life out there we didn't know about. And then this being comes forth, seems to be female, very beautiful, like just basically just shining. Everything's shining. In my mind, I was picturing the character Galadriel from Lord of the Rings, just shining everything. And so then the only top 40 single from this is Love Walks In from 5150. And I knew right away I wanted to use this song because it's a callback, because there's a line in Love Walks In that says Silver Lights Shining Down. So that's a callback to Silver Lights, the previous song. Yeah. So there's basically there is no fear. That these beings are peaceful and they want to help, and without, where silence speaks as loud as, it says war. I've always heard it as silence speaks as loud as words, but earth returns to what it was before. So he could never figure out what this being's name was. It was a language he couldn't figure out. So just as a nickname, he called her Plain Jane. So the earth survived this cataclysm, and they could go home now. It was safe to go home. And as they prepared to go home, kind of like as an interlude, I chose the song Starliner, which is an instrumental from Paper Money, second Montrose album. Nice. And then the last song, the conclusion to this story, comes from this album with the weirdest cassette packaging I've ever seen, wrapped around like this. Whether you call it Sammy Hagar, whether you call it I Never Said Goodbye, it's his contractual obligation album he put out in Geffen after he joined Van Halen. And the song is Returning Home. Nothing to do with space. It's just about returning home. It saw the ruins once the smoke cleared, once upon returning home. Once this place was paradise, green and blue colors of the sea. It's still alive, so it shall return eventually. So that's our little science fiction saga of how this character leaves the earth and comes back, and everything that happens in between. That's my little saga of Sammy Hagar's Out of Space. What do you think of that one, Martin?
Very cool, very cool. I did an audio podcast episode of my History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff audio thing on crazy ideas, right? And I remember, thinking, just like why doesn't Rod get all the Iron Maiden war songs together, or the movie songs, and make compilations like that rather than just endless greatest hits albums and stuff? And so the same thing here is like, I'm listening to you to tell this awesome story, and I'm thinking, man, I wish Sammy would like get together his solo band, or whichever band it is, and re-record all these songs and put it out as a concept album. Wouldn't that be cool, right? Like do a full re-recordings of all these, because as I'm listening to you go through this, I'm thinking, wow, there's a lot of different record companies here and a lot of different bands.
Well, there's no way he could license the Van Halen songs. Like, he might be able to get his own solo songs maybe the Montrose songs. There's no way he'd get the Van Halen songs.
But you're allowed to cover whatever you want, right?
You can re-record and do
So he can go in and do all this, and so that would be really cool. But yeah, that the whole Sammy story about the whole like I've heard him say this, like he's like, I was abducted by, I don't care who cares, who believes me or not. I know this happened. This is just like he tells this story, right? And so he's always had an interest in this, and you can understand why, if that's truly what he believes that actually happened to him, right? So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I think that whole thing, the whole UFO thing is not even a paranormal thing. It's just science. It just seems like, this has really got to be science or whatever. But yeah, what a great story. I love that. And I love the way you put the lyrics in there and stuff. So there you go, folks. Let us know what you think in the comments below of this concept. Are there other Sammy Hagar concepts that can be done as well? But I think Tim did an amazing job with this. And I hope Sammy's watching. I hope he makes this record. Talk to you next time.